You've seen the title of this video, the cat is out of the bag, or I don't know, the rabbit is out of the hat. I don't know how you say this in a proper English. But yeah, as you can see from the title of this video, my brain is on the spectrum and it's on the autism spectrum. And this is something that I've been wondering whether or not I should share my story, how I got there, how I got that understanding, because it came as a late diagnostic towards the end of my 30s, and that has changed quite a lot in my life. And I'm thinking maybe it might help some of you who are also going through the journey, or maybe wondering if you might be on the spectrum too, or maybe you have somebody in your life that you want to support and you are trying to understand what they are going through. I can give you my perspective. Of course, it's not theirs, but maybe give you some ideas about, what is going on, what are the different stages I've experienced, what are the questions I still have, how it changed my life a little bit, and share that experience, because I've been scrolling the internet and there are not so many people talking about that. And I'm thinking I must not be the only person who have gone through that. So hopefully it's helpful for you. If you think that's going to trigger you or in some ways, please stop watching this video. You don't have to watch me talk about this. But if you're interested, keep going. So story time. Where do we begin? I got this diagnostic in October 2020, what are we, 26, 24, so that's almost a year and a half in right now. So I'm still fresh in the processing, just want to preface that before I continue. And this really came out of the blue for me. I was really like, got a bust in my face at some point. And it all started with having a tough period in my life a few years back. So like, yeah, around like, mid 2024. And I was, quite struggling with mental health. But at some point I was going back up and I started noticing that I have more and more issues with relationships. And this has been something that has been a thread in my life. Like I've never had a lot of, like a lot of friendship, a lot of people, a lot of social connection. It has always been kind of things in the background that having moved multiple countries, I thought, oh, it's just like, that's just normal because I'm moving all the time. And also I'm more like on the introvert side. Introverted is a really word I hate. I hate this word. But anyway, that's what I was labeled at. That's what I was labeling myself at. So I was like, okay, it's perfectly normal. But at some point I was like, I'm getting older there and I would like to really work on that. So I started working with a therapist for a few sessions. And she was telling me to do things that for me made no sense. And she was telling me, oh, but this is how you do that. It's normal. If you are doing that, then it's not working for people. And I was challenging her back. I was like, no, but this is not how my brain works. This is not, if you are making me doing that, I hate it and I don't feel safe. And, they were kind of like a challenge, like somebody telling me I should be doing that. And I was doing the complete opposite. So I was like, maybe I'm not really normal. And then for some reason, a few days later, I was in a training. I was attending a networking event, and there was a speaker talking about neurodiversity and how to use that in the workplace. And she was mentioning autism, and she was mentioning how hard it is to have diagnostic and stuff like this, and self-diagnosis, and the fact that more and more people are discovering that. And she was talking about how it's showing up for her son, and I was like, I kind of relate to a few of these things. Okay, interesting. And then I was like, oh, it's in my brain. And then by the miracle of Instagram, do not ask me why Instagram did that, but I started seeing like, on your real feed, you can see videos of topics, and sometimes neurodivergence was popping up. And I was like, kind of, I started reading and I was like, my brain doesn't work like everybody else. I have been feeling strange my entire life. I've literally been feeling all the time that I'm either evolving in a whole different realm that other people, or like social connections. Sometimes they make absolutely no sense. Like I can see toxic patterns and people keep doing that. And I'm like, why are you doing that? So there's lots of like, things around just like social interactions in general that were giving me like, basically science. And then, following the trend of neurodivergent, I was reading more, I was seeing more and more reels, and I did a little bit more research. And I think in all the readings and all the materials I was looking at and listening to some people sometimes, describing how can it show up and what are the different things on the spectrum. And I was reading that, I was like, that's actually me. That actually explains basically a lot in my life. And it's always strange because it's a self-diagnosis, so it's not like, the therapist is telling you, yes, you have this or you don't have that. It's equally valid, by the way, if you are wondering, from my research, what I've been reading around, all the different ways you can get diagnosed, self-diagnosis is also a valid option. And particularly with autism, there's not necessarily like medication or specific like, adjustments you can really require, or that doesn't really serve you in terms of, even work accommodation, you can declare it, but it's not necessarily something like ADHD, for instance. The medication is useful, and you can have different things. So for me, it was like, okay, I don't necessarily need like a formal diagnostic, but let me think about it, and what if I made the hypothesis that I am? And then my brain starting going through a first phase of grief, which is perfectly normal. So there was this kind of phase of denial, like, no, I can't be that. I can't be that. And then there is a phase of bargaining, but like, yes, what if I am? And then your brain starts going through every single piece of your life. Like, it went back to childhood, to all the difficult moments where I felt rejected by people, or the difficult moments where I had a few meltdowns when I was younger that I did not realize right now were actual meltdown. Like, I was running away from places, and I got overstimulated. People pissed me off. I just moved along and ran somewhere else. They were actually like proper autistic meltdown that were seen as just, oh, you're just a child and you don't know what you are doing type of way to be handled. And yeah, so my brain was replaying all the situations, all the times where I felt misunderstood, all the times where there were conflict with people. You know, like, yeah, it just went through the whole grief process. And it was quite hard in terms of like level of sadness, because you also see, oh, actually, if I had been diagnosed earlier, then this would not have happened, because the people would have understood that. But then part of your brain is like, but no, actually, the people would not have understood that. And also, thank God I received this diagnosis right now, because I'm way more advanced in my life. Now I can handle it. Like, I have done enough work on myself to be able to absorb that and process it in a way that is, grieving and healthy, but I'm aware of what's happening, versus if I had been told that as a kid, oh my God, I would never be there talking to you on camera, because I would have been treated differently. I would have been probably, overprotected by people, or I would have made feel that I was not capable of doing what other people can do. So I think it would have actually impacted a lot of what I think, with all the skills that I've developed, all the confidence that I've developed, would have not have happened if I had known this earlier. So there is like a lot of like, back and forth with your brain, thinking about all the lack of kindness for some people, the lack of awareness for other people. And then you also start realizing, hey, actually, you know what, probably my father is also autistic, and probably my brother is also autistic. And then you are like, ooh, look at all the people around me I actually get along with. And you're like, oh, that person has ADHD. Oh, that person has specific needs, because they told me that their kids have specific needs as well. Oh, that other person is also ADHD. And I was looking back at, basically, most of the people I get along with are neurodivergent themselves, or in the process of being diagnosed, which makes sense, because we kind of notice that we have different brains, and we are perceiving the world differently, and we don't really feel that we belong. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, so there was a phase like this of grief, anger as well, obviously, at all the people who've treated me poorly, or did not even try to understand, or didn't even try to help. So that was quite, I think, a few months to just digest that. And you get along with your day, and poof, your brain is reminding you of that situation 20 years ago. That's like, yeah, that was the way my brain was expressing that it was on the autism spectrum too. And yeah, that was the first phase of grief. And then I moved a little bit outside of that, because at the time I was unemployed when this happened, so I was able to process it. But then I went back to work in normal settings. And this was the second phase of grief, because I had to go, and then I was like, do I actually share the diagnostic? Do I tell people that maybe I have needs, which is very hard for me, because I've lived all my life not thinking that I had specific needs, and now maybe I have actually needs, but I don't really know what they are, and I don't know if I can ask for them, and I don't know what is going to help me, and I don't know if I ask, then people are going to think that I always have this need, and it's not necessarily true. So there's a lot of like question marks around, actually, do you go out there and do you share this with people? And there are also a lot of like question mark, around identity. How do I even say that? I personally find it hard to call myself autistic, because I don't want to attach this identity to me. For me, that's a feature for my brain. So what I would say most of the time is that my brain is on the autism spectrum, and that's that's what helps me feel, okay, that's part of me. That's that's a piece of context that I need to understand about myself. It's real, it's there. So I need to take that into consideration when I make decisions or when I choose different things in life. And also, it's not just that. I'm not just that. I'm not just that label. I'm not just that. I'm actually been able to my entire life to do relatively well. So I am capable. And if I use the word autistic on myself, somehow my brain is like, that's not who you are. That doesn't represent the whole of who you are. So saying that my brain is on the autism spectrum is a safer option for me right now. And that might evolve in the future. Maybe in the future I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm autistic, let it go. But for now, that's not the case, and we'll see how this evolves. And obviously, that's a process, so it's not something that I cannot even predict. Even myself, I don't really know where this is going. So this is my current status. Another thing that happened is that when I restarted the work, I ended up with burnout, autistic burnout this time, not like normal. There's no normal burnout, but like a burnout where you're just tired and you need to take a break. This was like really autistic burnout in the sense that because of the settings of the work I was doing and the type of work and the amount of people, I actually, like, my brain was so overwhelmed it could not function properly. And it was like really like there was so much demand socially and from the world that my brain was like, okay, we can't do this. And yeah, it was very very different from the typical burnouts. It was very like linked to me realizing, oh, this is actually me with my autism in the brain reacting to the social demand and being very painfully aware about the amount of demand, which I think in the past I was not. I think in the past I would have just thought, oh, okay, it's like a beginning of a new work, it's the onboarding, it's always overwhelming, it's perfectly normal. But there I was very aware that it was sensorial overload and people overload and demand overload, and I had to really, really fight my way through. And with this type of burnout, it takes quite a lot of time to recover from it. And that's also something that, that's the second part of grief, is that also shifted my understanding about what am I actually capable of. Because through life, I've done plenty of tough things. I've been very hardworking. I've been building all the time. I've been running everywhere. And this is also an autism thing. I think it's like, it's getting obsessed with things. So you are doing because the brain is like, oh yeah, that's hyper focused. Let's do this thing, which can be both helpful, but it's also sometimes limiting. Or it can go too far and also create loops of, overworking and things like that. But now I was like, with this autistic burnout, it's like, I'm struggling. My brain is really struggling. And it also gave me the picture about, am I actually capable? What is my real level of skills? If I think about the future, if I think about my 40s, what am I going to do with that? Because I don't think that what I've been doing in the last 2 decades of my life is actually sustainable anymore. And I don't know. Right now, obviously, I'm in burnout, so maybe I have less capacity. So I also need to think, okay, it's going to evolve. It's going to go back to a more neutral place at some point. But is that neutral place the same as what I was able to do before? Probably not. And that's where, like, there's a little bit of like grief as well, of like you're basically losing your sense of self. You're losing your sense of, what can I do? What can I not do? And you also, like, I'm very confused, honestly, about the type of work I should be doing, because it's like some of these things I can say directly, my body is like, I don't want to do that anymore. Some other things I'm like, yes, maybe. Entrepreneurship is a question mark right now, because I'm like, can I go and do entrepreneurship in a way that is sustainable? And that's also a question mark about how do I build another business if I do that in a way that actually works. So that's the other questions I have. I will probably do another video on that, because I think there is something to be said around entrepreneurship and being neurodivergent, which is one of the best way to get freedom, but it's also a hard work. So I'm going to talk about it in another video. But yeah, so there was this second phase of grief right now that I'm still into. It's like redefining who I am, redefining how I can work from a place of alignments with how my brain works, and how can I really create systems around it that are like, it's not limiting me, because I don't want to call myself limited. I don't want to think about it as a limitation, but it's like context, and I need to take this into consideration. In the work, in how I live my life, in the lifestyle, in the different systems I have around me. So that's a lot of like losing who you are, losing who you think you should be, comparing yourself to the old version who didn't know that you were actually struggling with something. And yeah, making peace with all that is quite a process. I would say as well, something that I feel is also lost is like community, because when you get the diagnostic that your brain is on the autism spectrum, first of all, you are like, that's me. That I understand why I was not never feeling that I was belonging in this world. That makes sense. Now I understand why only a few people could really connect with me. That's a yeah. There is an explanation for it. And then you are like, but who are my people then? And sometimes, yeah, you go back to the normal world. You go back to around a lot of neurotypical people, and you are even more aware that you don't belong in their world. But I also find it hard so far to figure out who are the people in the neurodivergent space that actually are my people, because sometimes, if the spectrum of neurodivergence is so wide that my experience and my level of needs and the way my brain functions and the spectrum in which I evolve is very different from somebody else. So there might be people that are maybe also on the autism spectrum that I can't relate with because they are, they're experiencing it very differently with different levels that I cannot compare myself to them. So there is also like a lot of even internal community within the neurodivergent community. So this is also something that I'm still have as a question mark is, how do I navigate neurotypical relationships better, but how do I also build neurodivergent relationship in a different way, and who are my people? So this is this is a question mark that maybe is a bit less expected, because you expect, oh, now I know where I belong, and it's like, I know more or less where I belong, but within that belonging, maybe there is like little different pockets where I should be where I should be more involved. So lots of questions on that. Let me just check my notes, because I was like quite thinking about what I wanted to share today, and there's a lot. Yeah, I think the other piece that I'm still struggling with is like, that I was mentioning, like the disclosure of the diagnosis. Obviously, I'm now disclosing this in public on the platform for random strangers. So if you are listening, hello, say hello in the comments as well. But I found it really hard right now to still have the courage to disclose that and choose when to do it and when not to do it. I have had experiences where people did not understand it. Like, I tell them my brain is on the autism spectrum. They are like, they just brush it off and move along, and they don't really know what to do with this information, which makes sense because it's very complex. I also myself do not know what that means to me. So yeah, I can understand that they are not taking in the information. I also had people who assume that because my brain is on the autism spectrum, that I have specific needs without checking with me, or that if I do something that they don't like, it's because my brain is on the autism spectrum. So for instance, if I am being very direct and expressing something without too much filters, or without too much very nice politeness and like things like that, the immediate reaction is, oh, it's because she's on the autism spectrum, therefore autistic people are like rude by nature. And it's like, no, I'm actually a very thoughtful person. I'm trained in coaching, I'm trained in communication. I know how to talk to people in a way that can be heard and can be still direct but polite, and not not passive aggressive, but in a way that's still more direct than you expect, but still polite and still assertive. And so some people jump to the conclusion, oh, that's because you told me that vulnerability about you and that piece of information, and therefore if you do something I don't like, that's automatically why. So they kind of also refuse to take accountability for their own behavior. So I feel it's like, for me right now, I'm trying to navigate it very like case by case, one person per person, and really figure out, is that person somebody who is emotionally mature? Is that person somebody who can understand that this is just a piece of context about me, and that if I need something, I will let them know, and that are they still going to be treating me like a grown-up, capable grown-up, who is perfectly able of expressing her needs the same way another human being would express their needs. So yeah, it's still a work in progress. I would say it's actually very scary to do this video today and post it on social media, but I'm doing it because I know somewhere people will have a similar experience. So yeah, this is what has been going on in my life. All these questions left in suspension. And I would say as well, like a lot of the things that I'm doing right now is rethinking my systems, like rethinking my health, my mental health, rethinking the rhythm in which I can do things, really trying to understand what are actually my strengths, like what are the things that my brain is doing so well, that is so natural to me, that is so easy, that keeps me in flow, that actually I would like, if I was only doing that, my brain would be like, yay, so good, really, really nice life. And I really want to, kind of really understand that and look back at, how it served me, and try to like leverage these things even more, trying not to focus on the things that are more like the limitations, still knowing that they are there, still understanding, for instance, do I have like burnout patterns, where they're coming from, how do they show up so that I can interrupt them faster. If I want to interrupt that, what are the things that I can do? And same thing in communicating with people, how can I think about who I talk to and how do I share that? There are like a lot of things that like to reprocess and to relook at and to rebuild in life. So this is where I am right now, and it's changing obviously things. I really need to think about everything holistically. I think being a woman and also moving towards the very nice perimenopause things that we all know happens to women. That's also going to put a lot of strain on the brain. So I also need to take this into consideration in my health choices and in how I structure my life and my work. So that's a lot of work in progress. A lot of really finding systems, and just trying to either just make sense of who I am as a person again, like rediscovering myself. I think talking about this today and talking about it probably in a future videos is really going to help me process it and put words on it, which is also a big part of the the kind of healing process around it. Is like, how can I articulate who I am, what I do, what I need, what my brain, how my brain operates, and do it in a way that feels good for me, that makes me feel empowered, is going to be probably a good exercise. So yeah, I wanted to share with you today. If that resonated with you, feel free to leave a like or leave a comment. And if you want to hear more about this, and if you're also in your own process and you want to follow that, make sure to click subscribe as well, because I'm going to be there for a little bit talking about that. And I just wanted to leave it on today on what I've so far heard as the best definition of autism, because it's helped me as well, is that somebody who has autism is somebody who likes to do things in their own time, on their own terms. And I think this embodied for me what I've been living through in my life, which is that strong sense of freedom and that strong sense of rejecting the world's demands in general, and just being like, a kind of weird person who is not predictable. And it's just like, sometimes there's random things, sometimes there's plot twists that make no sense for the common world, but actually it makes sense to people on the spectrum. So do things on your own term, in your own time as well, if that's where your brain is. And I see you tomorrow for another video.